hear the term analytics, and some people have like this guttural reaction favorably or unfavorably, to it in the context of the baseball world. And what I can say is that the data that I have at my fingertips on a daily basis makes me exponentially better at my job than I would be without it. And so for me, the net positive is way, way, way better. I think where we get into trouble with analytics is we become too reliant on it, right? If you look at a player just as a collection of numbers in front of you,
Yes.
and you don't appreciate how that player might have struggled because of an injury, and you just didn't talk to him about it and understood that, or an approach change. Like we saw a major league hitter not too long ago who had been a guy that just hit the ball to the opposite field a ton, like had a very kind of an approach that had worked really, really well for him. The guy, major league all-star, signed with a new team, and they basically we want you to hit to the pull side for power. And it really changed his swing. It changed the way he looked at everything. It was a total difference maker. So the assumption would be like that he'd had a dramatic regression in his capabilities or anything like that. And really it was an approach change that then became kind of like a swing mechanics change. And he was a shade of him former self. So a lot of it was like reverse engineering these guys back to what they were. And that's where the data can be so helpful in the strength and conditioning realm is, hey, what were you doing when you were really good? Like, let's go back and let's look at some of that stuff. And what I find myself doing a lot is we have so many outcomes, right? We have exit velocities.
Yes.
We have pitch metrics.
Spin velocities too, right?
Yeah, you got spin rate, you got spin axis, you've got horizontal and vertical break, you've got extension, you've got horizontal and vertical release height. I mean, obviously you've got velocity. You have so many different things, and you have more video than you ever could imagine. We can pull video on really any player in any game in professional baseball and go and look at it, and that's super helpful from a drafting standpoint and all that. And what you're ultimately using all that information to do is try to recreate when they were at their best. We can scrutinize that better than ever before. And Steve's a close friend, and we talked about, because Steve helped out with the Falmouth Commodores in the Cape this summer. And
oh, nice.
Just talking about it, like him being involved, like he's coaching and he's excited about it and wants to stay involved in the game. And you realize how much easier, you don't have nearly as much video capability there. So it's a lot harder to coach when you don't have this stuff. Like I realized we did it for a long time. And I look back on like what we were doing in like 2010, 2011, whatever it is, when these numbers and technological advancements weren't available to us. Like it kind of keeps me up at night. I think about the guys that really could have helped who maybe didn't make it to the big leagues that could have if we had been able to teach them a better slider, or figured out why like they kept cutting their four seam or something like that. Now we have a $7,500 camera that can look at this thing in like total slow motion, and it was very cutting edge. I think 2016 World Series was the first time that they kind of like rolled it out and fans could see like what it was, and now they're commonplace. Like guys don't throw a single bullpen without that stuff on them now. So the game has just surged forward so much in the last 7 to 8 years, and it's really benefited pitchers way more than hitters, and that's why batting averages have gone down, and it's much harder to score runs. And so you saw the adjustments to the game with them, taking away the shift and bigger bases and reducing the number of step offs that pitchers can do to hold runners. They want to bring athleticism back in the game. They want more contact. So it's a different game now. Pitch clock as well. It's just much more fast moving.
Quick break from the show to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out, and it helps you be notified when we have new content get released. So again, please hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this content. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Has the pitch clock been something that also kept you up at night? Like, man, how can I make sure these pitchers, their arms are prepared for it, for the increased density of the work?
Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of thought into it over the offseason. Certainly with our guys, we tried to simulate it as much as we possibly could, bullpens and things like that. What I'll say is I can count on one hand the number of times I've heard guys complain about it. And I talk to a lot of different players from a lot of different organizations. I don't think we kind of expected to see this massive surge in pitcher injuries. Maybe there's some guys that were deconditioned that weren't ready for it. But what it was for me? It was, I think, a more remarkable lesson that work capacity is incredibly skill specific. I mean, everything is skill specific, right? You might have amazing balance as a hockey player, but if you went to ballet, you'd be terrible at it. We don't up your exception art. And I don't know if you remember when Lance Armstrong stopped cycling. Like he became a marathoner. He was actually a pretty average marathoner.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like these world, class VO2 max tests on cycling, but when he actually started running, there's obviously like different joint
Said
action.
principle,
Yeah, and work capacity is probably the place where it is. So what it speaks to is I don't think going out and just running lots and lots of poles or doing a bunch of like bike sprint intervals was what was going to help them, just because the actual pitch itself takes 2 seconds to execute, and then it's stand around for the next 13 seconds and deliver one. I think it had to do with just like, hey, when you're throwing your bullpens, make sure that you're like executing this in a timely fashion. And that's actually a kind of a challenging thing to push on them in the off season, because so many guys are working on stuff. So a lot of times they throw a pitch, they want to hear feedback from the pitching coach, they want to look at the iPad that's next to them to see what TrackMan is showing them. So you have to figure out where it all fits in. But I can't tell you that we saw a giant injury increase because of the pitch clock. Fastball velocity was up in baseball again, just like it has been every year for the last 20-something years. So I don't think it's altered, pitchers in a lot of ways. I think it's made the game more efficient. And like, frankly, like the feedback in general across the board was like, oh my gosh, these games go so much faster. It's great. Like I had during one of our spring training games, while the game was going, I had a meeting with another one of our staff members. We started in the 6th inning, we talked for 30 minutes, and the game ended. It was like we just played, like 2.5, 3 innings in 30 minutes. It flew by.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you guys about our sponsor, TeamBuildr. If you have any online training platform needs, TeamBuildr is the go-to place. TeamBuildr has the ability to integrate with velocity-based training tools. They have the ability to program and have notes and videos for all of your athletes and your clients. This is your number one stop shop. Been using it since 2019 when I was working at Towson. So I've used it, love it. Make sure you check it out. Go ahead, click the link down in the description. And with that, let's get back to the show.
And I never expected that was the case. So it was a good eye opener. And it gets outfielders off their feet. They're not standing around in uncomfortable cleats for an extra 3 hours a week. It's definitely shortened it for the better.
That's awesome. And that's actually something that Stevie and I did talk about, because I had just a theory. I was like, all right, let's take basic, strength and conditioning principles. Let's work above the demands. Let's work below the demands. Hey, when you're throwing a bullpen session, like maybe you have to treat it like an outing. Like, hey, we're going below the demands. You're pitching every 10 seconds. You don't get to see it until at the very end. Sit down, we'll talk about it, then go do it again.
Yeah.
And that's how I would go about doing it, like as an outsider, right? Like
We played a 6:40 start last night, and we won 9-4, I believe it was, and the game ended at 9:22.
That's awesome.
That's 13 runs and 2 hours and 40 minutes for a game. Like, it's one of the longer ones. There've been games that have been like right at 2 hours. But you also think about the trickle down effect is like that's a team that can get on the road and fly, and instead of getting in at 4 a.m., maybe they get in at 2 a.m., something like that. And then to be honest, for the fans, it's a family. They can get their kids in bed on time.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's a really big deal. Like, you got kids that can stay up and watch 4 innings on a school night instead of, only being able to see the first inning or something like that. So I do think there's some benefits. It just pushes out a little bit of the dead time in there. And the feedback, honestly has been pretty good. There were some, people who were struggling with it early on, but I feel like they've worked out the kinks pretty well, and it's made a better quality product.
That's unbelievable. I did not know about the tennis background, and I kind of then want to talk about, was your injury, was it a tennis elbow? Was it an elbow injury, and you were like, hey, let's look below the joint, and that's kind of was the genesis of Sturdy Shoulders. And if this is something you already covered, please, I apologize.
No, it was a shoulder, and I was a dying breed. I was a serve volleyer, so I was a much better doubles player, and I had kind of this big like externally rotated abducted kick serve.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.